probably one of the hardest things I've had to learn as a leader is to say, is this a situation where this failure is not going to kill the business, or will it kill the business? I have no clue.
There's a tendency when you start a business, this will be easier when I have 10 plus employees, and then I can stand in front of them at a meeting and say what I want, and then they'll figure out a way to pull it off, or we'll collaborate all together. And that dream is nice, but you do the math to
great on paper.
To get 10 good full-time employees, you need to have an extremely lucrative, profitable business.
Hey, I'm Sean Sidders, founder and CEO of Mallard Agency. I'm really excited for you to be tuning in to another episode of Founders in Flight. Today, I'm going to introduce you to Wesley Polk of Homestable. He's a personal friend of mine and also just in the fight with me as it relates to entrepreneurship here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We're going to be talking about struggles that have faced our businesses in the past, struggles that we're facing in our businesses right now, and also opportunities that are on the horizon for each of us as we progress forward. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Wesley, welcome to the podcast. Glad to have you. We're friends, but also in the thick of business ownership and management together. Just excited to be exploring your story and hear a little bit more about it. You want to tell us a little bit about Homestable and One Stone, and just walk us through your journey so far as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, Sean, thank you for having me. Glad to be here. This is my first time ever on a podcast, so I'm excited about that. I guess I'll give you the short version and let me know what questions you have. But right out of college, I started as a salesperson for a cleaning company that focused on construction cleaning called One Stone Solutions. And I was recruited by a friend of mine that was a year older that worked there before me. And pretty quickly, they sent me and a couple of other guys from Houston to Dallas to kind of launch a separate office. And that happened within weeks of me starting there. So it was quick. And we did that, tried our best to figure it out. And about a year later, I somehow stumbled my way into being in charge of the Dallas-Fort Worth office for that company. And that was great and went well. And fast forward 6 or 7 years from there, different leadership changes and kind of vision changes in the company. They kind of focused more on it becoming a janitorial company that eventually went and sold or is in the process of selling. But somewhere along the way, I got with the bank and got an SBA loan and purchased the construction cleaning side of the company that I had gotten to know really well and kind of spun off our own thing. So that was in March of this year. During that time, I launched Homestable, which we'll talk about, and we can talk about all the details and the vision of why that happened. But that was back in 2021, May of 2021, and that's still going and is roller coaster every day. That's one way to put it. And here we are.
Yeah. So I guess one of my biggest curiosities whenever I learned about your story, and we got lunch and chatted we met at church, then we got lunch and chatted about your story, was you have this, you already had a existing business that you had acquired and that you were really successful in, and then you decided to start something new in addition to that. And that was one of my big curiosities, was kind of, why would you do that?
Well, the new business started right in the midst of me just working. I think I was a regional vice president was my title, and I had not purchased it until well after Homestable began. And I was sitting at home. It was kind of on the tail end of having to be at home for the pandemic. And this gets a lot more into my personal backstory, but my dad passed away when I was young, and I never really had a chance to learn, when you graduate and you first live in an apartment or buy a house, and there's all kinds of things that break and need to be fixed and maintained. And I never was able to learn that from my dad, unfortunately. So I was kind of thrust into the post-college life of living in a house and not knowing what to do with anything. And my wife is a dreamer. She's a decorator. She has her own events business and always wants to be doing something to our house. There's never a project that right when one project finishes, the next one starts. And because I didn't have those skills by nature, we always had to outsource that. Sometimes it was to my friends, and sometimes we paid contractors, whatever it was. But I saw this inevitable path in marriage with her that she was going to always want to be doing something. And I had no idea how to do any of it. And so through that process, I tried every contractor and handyman in the book and didn't really love any of them. So I got to thinking, I've got to solve this for my own sake, because the old school process of calling a handyman up, they show up 6 hours later, you have no clue what it's going to cost. You don't even know if anything productive has happened. It's just, that's what got me to the drawing board. And so it was not created out of a need to do something different or a desire to break into the home service market or anything like that. It was simply, I had a problem that I needed solved. And so I got to the drawing board and just started talking about it with my friends and family and lunches and coffees, and one thing led to another, and here we are.
That's interesting. I feel like we've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs, and like there are so many stories that are really similar to that, where it's just like, I had a problem, therefore I developed a solution, and here we are. I think that obviously is like a very like oversimplified version of the story. So I guess, why not just go out and try to find somebody else who could solve that for you? Like, why did you decide to make an entire business out of it? And like, what makes the struggle of owning a business like Homestable, which is challenging just in, I'm sure, a number of ways, what makes it worth it for you?
So to your first question, I think that to be an entrepreneur, there's a little bit of nature that it's just part of your nature. My parents were entrepreneurs, and I always have ideas. I always had ideas. And Homestable, this modern handyman company, as we originally called ourselves, was not the first idea. I really actually pursued a totally separate idea that was a bad idea. I'm happy to talk about way before Homestable even came. That spark of Homestable existed. And so I would just say that it's not that idea came and I was able to achieve it. It was that it was just another idea. And the barrier of entry with that one was pretty low, because I didn't have to develop a product. I didn't have to, trademark anything. It was just, hey, there's this concept I want to kind of explore and put into some spreadsheets and see if it exists. And then started telling people about it, and got connected with one guy who really helped take it to the next level. And what was your second question? What makes it worth it for you? Well, that's a tough question, because here we are almost 4 years later, and the team has grown, and the headaches are still there. They're just a lot bigger. The same headaches that were always there, they're just compounded pretty significantly. But as far as what makes it worth it, going into the office every day, seeing the people on the team, having the team meetings, realizing, I have in my calendar this Saturday, one of the guys on my team is moving into his house that he just bought last week. And he had been renting the first 3 years we worked together. He's been at Homestable since day one. And I'm not saying I have me or Homestable have everything to do with that, but we definitely have something to do with it. And I think that's worth celebrating, and important to remember that it can get so easy to just see, hey, is the net income positive, or are you losing money? Like, yes or no, and just get caught up in that. And yes, that's important. And of course, if you're losing money too many months or quarters in a row, it's not going to exist anymore. But for now, where I'm at, ask me again in a year, but where I'm at right now is just looking around the other people at the company that have made a really good living, and that's what's made it worth it. Yeah. I mean, I share in that sentiment. I think that if you want to really build a team and do that really well, and that's like a really core part of your business, like you almost have to love it naturally. You have to be in it for others kind of from the start. And but then again, like that leaves a little bit of a vulnerability for you and for me as the people who are at the top. And I think it leads to potentially, I've had seasons of loneliness. I've had seasons of confusion and frustration and like wanting to quit, all these different feelings. I know that there's probably somebody who listens to this or is watching this who is early on in their entrepreneurial journey, or they're 20 years down the path and they're feeling that still.
What's your experience with that been for you, like as Wesley, not Homestable?
Yeah.
What's that looked like for you?
Well, I'll say that it's absolutely a common feeling, and I've had it weekly, if not daily, for the past 4 years at Homestable. And if anyone listening does feel that way, it's very normal to feel that. As far as how it's been for me and kind of my strategy with it, it's twofold. Number one, early on when Homestable was just an idea in my head, and then I looped one other person into it as quickly as I could, I looped other partners into it. And I don't mean equity partners, you're sharing half of the company. I mean people that they could buy in, whether you're paying them a little bit and it's a side project for them, or they're passionate for whatever reason, something they're going to get in return, whether that's just, there's been people on my team that were emotionally fulfilled just by being part of the team. They didn't really even care to be paid. They just wanted to be in the room, right? And that always helped with that feeling of loneliness, because I don't think I could have done it if it were just me and I was kind of pulling the strings from mine. I had to be meeting face to face, seeing these other people in the room, solving the problems together. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, I don't think I ever formally wrote it down or anything, but there was just a list of people in my head, probably 6 or 7 people. One was an old teacher I had. One was someone that I did ministry with in college. One was a good friend of mine currently that I still hang out with often. And I would kind of cycle through those people where if I had a high stress day or a specific moment that just knocked me on my rear that day and I just needed to talk about it, I would kind of go down that list. And again, it was just kind of in the back of my head and call the next person. And they could tell right when I called that I just needed to talk.
Yeah.
And again, I never formally said to those 6 or 7 people, hey, you're on my list. I want you to be ready when I call. You're welcome to do that. And if you have that many people that you can kind of have that formality with, that's great. These people probably didn't even know that they were that for me. They were just friends of mine that cared about me. And they genuinely did. And I wasn't afraid to, and I'm still not afraid to lean into that and rely on that, because that's important.
Yeah. I feel like the only other thing I would add to that, like from my experience, is really like I almost didn't give myself permission to go and find the community that I knew I needed throughout the entire experience, because I came up with excuses like, well, that's a waste of time. Like, I'm fine. I'm always going to be fine. So I'm just going to continue to operate through this loneliness or, stress. And I'll get to myself once the business becomes a certain level of sustainable. And in my head, like I think I knew deep down that wasn't actually really very healthy, actually quite not healthy at all. And it wasn't until I really decided to actively pursue the community that I knew that I needed. And I just don't really believe that there's a situation where that community doesn't exist if you really want it.
Right.
I think it is possible. Like you and I, we met at church, and now we are dozens of conversations later supporting one another through our businesses, even though I run a marketing agency and you run a home improvement business. Like that to me wouldn't happen unless both of us were bought in and we knew what we needed. The same thing applies to dozens of other people that I've really poured into and also been poured into by them. In some cases, actually, I'm not even really being poured into. I'm not even really pouring into them. Like, they're just pouring into me. And that was really hard for me to actually like accept and receive, because I'm a giver. Like, I solve problems. I don't develop problems for someone else. Like, that to me feels, if I'm being authentic, selfish and like a waste of time. It feels counterproductive, and I think I just had to give myself permission, and it's still a battle, right? And making it sound like I solved everything, which of course I didn't. But it's a constant battle to actually like be able to receive that, and allow for it to actually benefit me and inherently my family and my team, my clients, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely. And just to highlight what you already said, early on in starting Homestable, friends of mine would know how many times I was going to meet people for coffee or for lunches or breakfast, and they would give me such a hard time. Wesley never works, and they didn't know how much I was actually working. But in reality, that was always selfish, because those meetings, like you said, they feel like a waste of time. Oh, I'll get to that whenever I have the time, because it's just a friend from college, or it's, the first time we had lunch, you were just someone I met at church, and I wasn't ready to work with a marketing agency at that point. And I could have been, I'll meet with Sean for lunch another day when I have more time, because I need to work on the business. But those lunches, those coffees, those breakfasts, whatever it is for you or for whoever's listening, can just fill you up in such a way that it then allows you to be way more productive, way more on top of things when you're back at work at the office. And then you never know the opportunities that'll come from those lunches. I wouldn't be sitting here with you if I didn't go to that lunch.
Right.
So there can be some selfishness with it, but lean into that and say, hey, I'm doing this for me. I'm going to lunch with this old friend so that I can then be much better when I'm the boss at the office, right?
Yeah, definitely. Knowing that you said you're 4 years into it, about?
Yeah, a little over 3.5.
Okay, me too. I mean, I could ask this question of myself, but I'll ask it of you first, and maybe you'll throw it back at me. But sure. What are the key things that you're facing like today that are the hardest for you? Like practically, is it developing products that are actually compelling to the market? Is it cash flow management? Is it people management? Is it finding an office? What are the current challenges that you're facing? And I guess, how are you navigating through those things?
For the first question, can I just say yes to all of those? I mean, you're preaching to the choir, right?
You're like, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Right. It really is. So cash in any sort of construction business, I think cash flow, especially early on, is always going to be one of the major problems. And that's exactly where we are right now. The conversation that I always have with one of the guys that's been here for the last 3 years is, it's the same problem we've always had. It's just 10, 20, 30x what it was 3 years ago. So it feels much more dramatic. But percentage wise, it's just the exact same in and out. And that's nothing new, right? But it doesn't make it any easier. If anything, it makes it more stressful. And so when you run a business, and more importantly, when you have employees, and those employees are counting on paychecks from you and your business to then go feed their families and do things, buy a house, whatever it may be, that's a lot of pressure. So that cash flow, it's not as simple as, well, let's just freeze our costs for 2 weeks while we wait for this check, because those employees, the more you have, the more people are relying on that payroll to come through. So I'm just going to keep talking about cash flow if I don't stop myself. So cash flow is obviously a big problem.
Yeah.
Your other things you mentioned are big problems also. I don't want to call them problems. Problem is a strong word, more of just obstacles that we have to figure out the best solution to. And back to my point earlier, having a team around you, even if it's not a team of full-time employees, I think that there's a tendency when you start a business, this will be easier when I have 10 plus employees, and then I can stand in front of them at a meeting and say what I want, and then they'll figure out a way to pull it off, or we'll collaborate all together. And that dream is nice, but you do the math to get
great on paper.
To get 10 good full-time employees, you need to have an extremely lucrative, profitable business with a great trajectory. Like, the chances of getting to that point are really low.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, I was just creative with how did I get people to feel like they were part of the team? I got someone to do our social media posts where I paid her, or still pay her, by the week, as long as she achieves a certain amount of posts. And it was very much a side gig for her. She did mortgage stuff with her full-time job, right? And then I got another guy who works in aviation, and he was essentially our CFO for a long time, until we could actually bring in an accountant that could manage the books and run all the money. And those people are just a couple examples of a dozen or so that wanted to come to the meetings, the big team meetings we had once a week, and be part of this thing. But the barrier of entry, the cost, more importantly, was really low, so it was possible to do. And it didn't solve everything. It created other problems. It created some identity crises a bit. You've seen us having our meetings. You've passed by at that coffee shop, and it's a huge group, and sometimes it feels really top heavy until you look financially. It's truly not. But people management is another big problem. You asked what are the issues right now. Those are kind of the big ones.
Yeah.
How to solve it, I think I already addressed everything but the cash flow. The cash flow is just we're continuing to try to build our processes out and make sure that we can predict as much as we possibly can, and that's how we can solve that.
Going back to what you were talking about as it relates to just like telling yourself that, I think it's just so dangerous to say, once we hit this point in our business, whether it be a certain number of people or a certain amount of revenue or a certain profit margin or a certain brand perception in the market or a certain number of customers served, I could go on, is really dangerous. And what I've heard from somebody is that actually that 10 employee mark that you just referenced is actually when things get really challenging, because you're talking about not just 10 mouths to feed, but now you're talking about, you know, the children and the spouses and the mortgages and the and you know, that's just extremely it can be really stressful. I want to sit here and pretend like it doesn't impact me. It does. I mean, it really impacts me. I take it really seriously. I also happen to like really love having people on my team, and so I feel like sometimes I have this like natural propensity to like go towards W-2 versus like having a contractor on my team because of my just natural affinity for having like a little bit of a larger team. And that got me into some trouble like early on in our business. It was just like, oh wow, like our payroll actually doesn't match, you know, the rest of our P&L. Like this math equation doesn't work. And it took, I think it just takes some lessons, some failures along the way. Everybody talks about that, but going through it sucks. You can talk about it all you want, but when you actually go through it, you're not really considering all those conversations you had about it beforehand. And so just talking about like, it never really becomes easy. I think that the only thing that I've found to work really, really well is whenever you do hire somebody, to demand a lot out of them and to also compensate them appropriately in accordance for that work. And then by delegating that much, you're then able to pull back and then take care of them in ways that you wouldn't have been able to if you chose not to delegate to them, if you didn't demand a lot. And so it actually ends up working out in the end. So from my seat, it's just a constant exercise of delegation, which sounds great as I'm talking, but it's actually really hard because I have to watch people fail all the time. Almost like watching the car crash as it's happening and observe it from afar so that you can have a post-mortem after is probably one of the hardest things I've had to learn as a leader, is to say, is this a situation where this failure is not going to kill the business, or will it kill the business? I have no clue. That just gets compounded on top of each other whenever you have 10 people.
Yeah, I have a question for you on how you deal with it. So this happens all the time. You delegate something and then it doesn't go your way. And then the customer who is at Mallard because they knew you or they knew someone that you knew, and the first meeting was a call to Sean. Yeah. They call you and you see the phone ring. You already know about the problem because you're privy to those details. In my experience, when I take that phone call, I answer it, I hear the problem, I tell them how we're going to fix it. It just kind of messes everything up. It makes my employees mad at me. It makes the customers get false promises from me. It just messes with everything. Yeah. And so I've learned through my team's feedback, hey, you can take the call. It's your customer, sometimes even a family member that's also a customer that's complaining. Sure. But figure out a way to graciously say, hey, I'll listen to you, but I'm going to just go to the person that you were originally working with and collaborate with them on how to solve this. So it's probably better if you just call them directly and push them to do that. Say you'll listen, but that they still need to talk to the project manager, or in your case, the producer, whoever was on the account. And so how do you deflect that tendency for people to go straight to the boss if they happen to know him or her?
You know, I believe in delegation for the execution of the work, and like full on delegation of the execution of the work. And I believe in the full acceptance. Instead of deflecting, I would more so use the word absorb. For me, that's my approach. So my team knows that if they mess up or if a client has unrealistic expectations, that I will get into the weeds if they need me, and they trust me to do that. But that's the initial reaction. There's multiple levels of the reaction. So let's talk about a hypothetical scenario. We were doing a project one time, and honestly, the work that we were delivering just wasn't hitting for the client. And they called me after trying to work with my team on it for a number of different rounds, and they called me really frustrated. And I mean, I don't like having those conversations. I don't think anybody really does. But what I did is and this is really just I think I got a little lucky, to be honest, but I just listened. I just really listened and really put myself in their shoes. And I think the natural reaction would be to say something along the lines of like, really appreciate you giving us that feedback. However, your expectations are completely unrealistic. Instead, I took this approach of, honestly, like, I really get where you're coming from. What you're saying, like, if I know your business, like, my guess is that this, and this is happening, and therefore, like, you're feeling this, and this away. Am I right? And they were, we had a long conversation. It was really difficult. I then went back to my team and explained the conversation and told them that I really appreciated their diligence, their hard work, but also that their work wasn't meeting standards. And I explained to them in an empathetic fashion what our clients were going through, because they don't really think like business owners. I'm trying to train them in that regard, and I think we've done a great job of that since. Anyways, the point being, I absorbed it. I took the brunt of it. I still gave the critical feedback to my team, but I did so in a constructive manner. That same client that gave us that feedback, I think they might be our biggest advocates to this day. They wrote us a glowing Google review at the end of the project. They are consistent with their follow-up even after the project concluded, keeping us updated on the benefits of our work for them. That moment of me absorbing that feedback, giving it to my team, making sure that I didn't sugarcoat it too much, but that they saw that I was willing to be that backstop for them. It inspired them to go and to crush it the next time. And that's my philosophy. I think it's a little bit like against what I used to do, which is kind of like, I'm delegating this fully, so you have to deal with it. I just, maybe I'll get there someday, maybe, but I'm 3.5, 4 years into my business. Some of my employees have only been here I have an employee who's been here for 3 days, and I have other employees who have been here for 3.5 years. And both of them are still on a journey to be able to do what I'm able to do as the owner. So, I don't know. That's my thought. Tell me where I'm wrong. No,
you're not wrong. I love it. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. This is maybe backtracking a little bit, but a quick story about when you get to that 10 people plus.
Yeah.
What makes that difficult. So just cut me off if we're going in the wrong direction here. So we had we do home maintenance. That's what we started as. We now do remodels and construction, but I'm going to use a little bit of a home maintenance metaphor. When you own a home, there's always something going wrong. If it's an older home, like the homes I've owned, it's always something's wrong. You're always putting out a fire, not literally, hopefully, but there's some leak or something you're bringing your attention.
Yep,
but
so true.
All the while, you still have to change the air filters in the air conditioning unit and kind of do the upkeep and maintenance, or else you're going to cause a way bigger problem by neglecting that. And I learned early on that I just don't have the focus to remember to do that. And so I probably could have set an alarm on my phone, but I went and started a company that does that stuff for me. But here's where I'm going with this.
As one does.
Yeah. Here's where I'm going with this is, as you get to a certain level of employees, you can be the most intentional, caring person in your social life and in your family or at church or whatever. And even at the beginning of starting the business, but there's a point when you reach too many employees where you just cannot be that person anymore without relying on others or on some sort of technology reminder to help you be that person? And then at that point, does it start to feel fake? The example of this morning, I was in the office. We had a big team meeting. Everyone disperses, goes off to the job sites and everything. And then one of our employees who was going to do what we call a one-day punch list, where they go work for a full day, he's a handyman, comes in the office to grab a bit to help install door hardware, like the bolts on the door. And I realized after he had left that I hadn't seen him since outside of work, his appendix burst and he was in the hospital for 2 weeks. And I didn't mention it. It didn't even cross my mind because I had just walked out of a team meeting with 30 things thrown at me that were all on my mind. And then I knew I had a podcast this afternoon and I was just distracted and I just didn't even think. Now, in your family, if your sister, your brother, your mom comes in and you haven't seen them since a major surgery, of course you're going to remember. But as the company grows, you just can't be that person to every employee. And so what I've learned, the solution is, if it's a good business model, that person's probably going to report to somebody else before it gets up the ladder to you. So you need to empower that person they're reporting to be that guy or girl. And for them to care and go above and beyond, like you hopefully did at the beginning of your company. It was 2, 3, or 4 people. Yeah. So maybe this was a random tangent here.
Not at all. No, I actually feel that's a recent thing for me is to establish a leadership team of people and each of those leaders managing a department. And all of a sudden my responsibilities went from managing 9 people, which is a lot in my opinion, to managing 2.
Right.
Okay, I have this department and this department as my core departments in this organization. And my responsibility is to be the best possible manager, the best possible advocate, the best possible mentor, sounding board, etc., for these 2 people. And then my other job is to equip them to do that for their 3, 4 people. Right. And once again, especially if you really like the people you're hiring, you kind of, it's hard to give up the management. Like there are some employees who I no longer manage who I would really love to sit down with for a one-on-one, or I would really love to, just encourage them on a regular basis. And not to say that I can't do that. It's just certainly not sustainable and not necessarily also it's not really giving the people on your team an opportunity. And a lot of people want an opportunity with people management. It's really hard work. I mean, we could talk about that for a whole segment. People management is hard, and so, but a lot of people want that experience, and naturally so. That it's something that where you add clear value to other people's lives, but it requires a lot of training and development. And I think that before, at least for me, before I put somebody into that position, like I'm going to really spend some time with them to make sure that they're adequately prepared, because I feel like it would be a disservice for me to put them in that situation without doing that. So anyways, I guess the point being that in order to be able to actually properly equip somebody to be a people manager, you have to only have 2, 3 of those each. And for me, I'm grateful that I've been able to establish that, but obviously still not perfect, just a little further down the path, which really kind of speaks to like the patience that's required as a business owner and the resilience. I was talking with somebody else about that in a different episode of resilience being a really core aspect of what we have to, employ as business owners. And it's just not easy though. It's not that easy. I guess one of my last questions for you is, what do you see in the future for your business? Practically, how do you want to see yourself grow as a leader within the business? Kind of walk me through, what does the future look like for both Homestable and Wesley?
On the Homestable side, you want me to get in the weeds of the actual business? Yeah. I think to answer that one first, Homestable has kind of been turned into 2 separate things. One is this ongoing preventative maintenance and handyman service, and the other is remodels and construction. And I want to see how those 2 things can really work well together. I think that we should be doing ongoing maintenance, preventative maintenance, getting building a relationship with these homeowners. And then when they decide they want to do a remodel, they already know us, they love us, hopefully. Then they can call us and we send that team in to come give them a proposal to do their kitchen remodel. And then on the other side, we do kitchen remodels, bathroom remodels, new builds, whatever it may be. Most of the time in construction, by the time the project's over, the contractor wants out of there, the homeowner wants them out of there, and they never want to talk again unless there's some warranty items.
Yeah.
And it's a big headache. And I don't want to be unfair, not most of the time, but a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I want to have the opposite mindset where we say, hey, yeah, we're done. We're finishing up these punch items. Final payment has been given. We should be walking away, but we have this other side of the company that does monthly or quarterly preventative maintenance. We would love to throw in a year of that as part of this deal, see if you like it, and then we can stick around, right? And so the two sides of the business are feeding each other and kind of thinking as the antithesis to most home service companies that are in and out, never see you again. Kind of getting a quick bit of revenue and then bouncing. And we're trying to not be that. So that's where I want to see us go.
That's
and
awesome.
I think we have the vision. It's just practically implementing it.
What about for you as a leader?
Where do I want to go? Like where
do you want to see yourself develop? Like where if you were looking at yourself 12 months from now, how have you changed in your leadership capacity and abilities?
I would hope that you would hear me say that I had no experience at all with starting a business. I didn't even have a business degree, right? But I just went for it. And the last almost 4 years have been me essentially getting a in the field business degree.
No doubt.
I could say the same about construction. I told you at the beginning of this episode that I didn't come into the building with all of these skills. I had to immediately find someone else that had those skills, and they're still here today and they're doing a great job. And so I had no business experience, no construction experience. What am I doing? Starting a business or a company focused on construction, right? But I spent the last 4 years assembling the right people, setting up the right opportunities for those people to connect and maybe just through line and figure out how we make this work together. And that's been a lot of fun and rewarding, and I wouldn't change it. But I think it's finally time for me to say, okay, now what would a normal business do? What would a normal HR department look like? What would it look like to have an email server that can actually do the things that everyone's used to in a business environment rather than going off of whatever cheap version we've been using, right? So it's kind of a boring answer, but I want to take what you hear about in the stories and podcasts like this, that's felt kind of like the whole dining room table version of a company, and turned it into something that feels, no pun intended, more stable as a company, right?
That was good.
Thanks. I guess pun intended.
Do you want a job in branding? Or?
No, thank you.
Oh man, so good. Well, I think that, the reason why I love ending with that question is because it gives a peek into the mind of an entrepreneur. It shows the constant product development and ideation and inspiration behind people like us who are kind of crazy. You're crazy, just so you know.
I know.
And also it gives it. I think it just is so helpful, and it was so helpful for me to experience conversations like this in other forums, just as a listener in the past, where I was like, oh wow, like that person is like me. I'm not that crazy. Or maybe I'm crazy along with someone else. So I'm grateful to be crazy alongside you in this business ownership season that we find ourselves in. I'm also, truthfully, really, I know sometimes you don't give yourself the most credit, but I think that you should really understand that you're having a real impact on people, and through both of the businesses that you're operating. Homestable is legitimate, and I'm really impressed with what you guys have created. I know you don't like when people do this either, so I'll stop there and just thank you for being here and for being a great friend.
Yeah, thank you.